this race is very important. It is one of those things, and I know every time I get up here I say every race is one of the most important ones, but I think this is the honoring the legacy of Marguerite Lamont, and who has been a very close friend to UTLA and to education, to all her babies in the district. So thank you all for coming. We are going to have questions, have a lot of answers, introduce you guys to some of the candidates you might not know, some of the candidates that you are familiar with. We have a format. Our vice president in charge of school board candidates, Brent Smiley, will be moderating. He's going to talk a little bit about how the process is going to be going and how the evening is going to be going today. So thank you again all for coming, and Brent.
Oh, they don't need that. Okay. Good evening. My name is Brent Smiley. I am the PACE Vice Chair for LAUSD School Board. Before we do anything else, I need everyone to be aware we are being filmed this evening. The camera's in the back, just so you understand that that will be done. The reason for that is so that we can post that for our Board of Directors and our House of Reps that will be deciding this issue in the next 2 weeks. The format that we'll be following is each candidate will be given in alphabetical order to open, 2 minutes as an opening statement. Then we'll begin a series of questions. The first 3 questions were questions that were submitted prior to this evening. But we want more questions. We need more questions. And every candidate will answer the same question. To be fair, it will be done in a rotating order so that no one has the ability to speak first or last each time. And then lastly, we'll have 2 minutes for a closing statement in the reverse order of the opening statement. If you need a card to ask the questions, the index cards are back on the table, and then you can just give it to Jose or Marco, and they'll sift through them. One more item, and that was we got way more questions beforehand than we can handle. At the beginning, we do want to give the people in this room the ability to ask questions. And so we picked 3 that seem to be representative of the whole, and the other questions that were submitted beforehand that were not being used for the first 3 are part of the what Marco and Jose will be looking through and then feeding me throughout the evening. So let's go ahead and we can start with opening statements. We're going to go in alphabetical order, so we'll start with Alex Johnson.
Well, good evening. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to this forum. Let me simply tell you who I am. I'm the son of a retired truck driver and a public school teacher who retired after 20 years in LAUSD. I'm the product of 2 LA Unified schools, having attended Los Angeles Center for Enriched Studies and Rosewood Avenue Elementary School. I'm the grateful beneficiary of great teachers who allowed me to go to Morehouse College and to go on to law school. I'm the grateful beneficiary of teachers who instilled in me a commitment to public service, a commitment that allowed me to serve children and families. It's allowed me to ensure that the next generation is better off than the one before. But most importantly, I'm someone you can work with. I'm someone who will listen to you, someone who will seek your input, someone who will seek to collaborate with you on every single issue. I know that without you, without teachers, without those who are gathered in this room, we cannot close the achievement gap. We cannot have safe schools. We cannot have great schools. So I thank you for your support. I look forward to this conversation this evening. Thank you.
And Rachel Johnson.
You hear me? Thank you. I'm also going to stand because I think this podium is blocking the view for our friends over here on this side. Good evening. First of all, I would like to thank the leadership and membership and the PACE committee for allowing us the opportunity to speak to you this evening. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rachel Johnson, a proud 31-year kindergarten teacher for LAUSD, a proud 30-year member of UTLA, and a member of the Gardena City Council since 2005. I am also a product of LA Unified Schools. I have 4 children who are products of LA Unified Schools and have gone on to college. 3 have graduated, and I have 1 now, freshman at Arizona State. I have 2 grandchildren that are in the early ed program through LA Unified School District. So as you can see, I'm very well invested in this school district. I am running not to replace the Honorable Marguerite Lamont, but to continue her fight, to continue her struggle for educational and social justice for the children of Board District 1. My mission for running is very clear. Number 1, as your board member, I will fight for fair compensation for all teachers of LA Unified School District. I think 7 years is far too long without a raise. I dip too much into my pocket to support my children and to support my curriculum, and my school for the mission of education. Number 2, class size reduction. Let's restore our classrooms to the pre-recession limits, the way they were, so that allows teachers to do their job fairly and equitably. Number 3, fully staffed schools. Let's bring funding back to our schools, those pre-recession levels. Let's restore support staff. Let's restore adult ed, and let's fully fund early education programs. We must refocus our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hattie McFrazier.
My name is Hattie McFrazier, and I would like to thank the PACE Committee for inviting us for this particular forum. I am running for this position because I feel that I am the best candidate. With 31 years of experience working with all of the children in Los Angeles Unified School District, homeless, students that have dropped out of school, students who are considered foster care youth, ESL students, all of the students in LA Unified, I have spent my lifetime working with. I feel that LA Unified need a complete makeover. What do I mean about a complete makeover? The entire district and the community is really fed up with what's going on in LA Unified. We need to restore confidence in our community and with all the employees within LA Unified School District. How do we do that? We first assess first of all the strengths of District 1. Then we look at the weakness of District 1. And then we look at the opportunities for District 1. And then we look at the threats. What is keeping District 1 still in the background? I want to make sure that when I am on the school board, that I will recognize all of the employees and make sure that all employees receive a decent pay raise. I'm really concerned about us making sure that we take care of all of LA Unified School District's children. Thank you.
Dr. George McKenna.
Thank you. I am running because my dear friend died. My friend and colleague, Marguerite Lamont, with whom I shared many common experiences. I have been in the LA Unified School District for over 28 years, either as a teacher or an administrator. All of the schools in which I worked, 4 middle schools and 4 high schools, are all in District 1 as it is configured now. I've not only been a teacher, I have supervised teachers. I've supervised people who have supervised teachers, supervised principals. I've supervised people who've supervised principals and supervised directors who've supervised principals. So I know the length of the land. I've been a local district superintendent. And not only supervised, but supported and evaluated and assisted and trained. So my experience is broad and it's also deep, and it focuses on children. And I know that schools are not effective unless first the children show up every day, and also that there are teachers there who want them to be there every day and reach out to ensure that they're there every day. A dropout is not a student who has perfect attendance. A dropout is a student who begins to show it early on. The key to it is our middle schools, which is the bridgeway between the elementary and what they couldn't accomplish and what the high schools are expecting. But the bottom line is that you as the teachers, all of the teachers, need to be not only supported, but protected. Protected in ways not only economically, but professionally and emotionally and psychologically from anything that might oppress you or anything that might be punitive towards you. And I'm the one that knows how it happens. I'm the one that has seen it happen. I'm the one that has resisted anything that looks like punishment for teachers. And I'm also the one that wants to represent your support system that can help you to become better than you are now and help each other with collegial visitations and conversations and support systems. My mother was a teacher. I think I was born to be a teacher. I was born in September. I might die in June. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Charlotte Handy Newbill.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Charlotte Handy Newbill. I am a product of LAUSD and a proud graduate of Dorsey High School. I stand before you with almost 20 years of teaching in psychology and physical education, as well as being a girls basketball coach. And I stand here because I am not a politician. I am not an administrator that's been retired. I am a teacher, just like every one of you out there. I'm a teacher who is in the trenches, who know what it's like to have class sizes of 40, and in my case, 75, who know what it's like to have no nurse at a school like today. I know what that's like. I'm also a union rep at Dorsey. So you know what? I know what it is to organize. I know what it is to bring all the stakeholders together. I know what that's like. But outside of just being a teacher, a union rep, and a coach, most importantly, I'm a mother. I'm a mother with a son named Isaiah Mason Newbill, who is going to be in the schools in Board District 1. And that drives my passion even more because I want to see those schools better. I want to see those schools improved. And that's why I'm here. And with that said, you know, No Child Left Behind, race to the top. You know what? I've been there, I've dealt with it, not having a pay raise. I know what that feels like. Being budget cut, buying expensive stuff where our schools are falling apart and they can't explain why. I've been there. I'm there with you. So I say all that to say that as a teacher on the board, I want to be able to sit right next to Monica Ratliff as a teacher and to be able to fight all the attacks that have come against teachers, against students, and to be able to support our school system the way they ought to be. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll begin the questions. We'll start again in the same order for this, and then we'll begin alternating. Starting with Mr. Johnson. The dropout rate in School Board District 1 is higher than both the state and district average and is shaping up as one of the defining issues in this race. What is your view on the current state of academic expectations and consequences for LAUSD students? And what can we do to better prepare K through 8 students to thrive in high school?
Thank you for that question. Thank you for the question. Number one, the dropout rate is just completely unacceptable. We're losing too many of our children, too many of our young people, not to college, not to a good career, but to prison, but to the grave in many instances. I see where they go. I work for the county. I see them in those probation camps. I see them in our county jails. We must stop this dropout rate. We must stop the generation of young men and women who are untrained, who are rendered to a lifetime of poverty. And so what does it take? It takes investment early on. It takes investment in early childhood education. It takes investment in our schools. It takes making certain that we have our fair share of resources in our schools, that we are supporting great teachers in our schools, providing them with the professional development that they need. So it's unacceptable. But we can control it. We can do better. We can make certain that the next generation of young people, that this generation of young people are going to college, that they're graduating from high school. And so investing in early childhood education, making certain that we have our fair share of resources, and making certain that we are not pushing students out of school. That's how we end the dropout rate. That's how we improve our schools. That's how we close the achievement gap. That's how we close the opportunity gap. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. Investment in our schools is critical. As Mr. Johnson has stated, no relation, that investment in early childhood education is first. We must restore those funds to our local primary schools and our primary ed centers to give the children a great foundation. But as they travel through the school district, or travel through their career in school. Once they get to high school, we have to continue to invest like we do at the primary level. What we must do is to bring back, first of all, vocational education. Not every child will go to college. If it is our mission in LAUSD to make all children college and career ready, let's make sure that we invest in programs that will do just that. Bring back vocational education. Invest in those programs that will give children a trade, give them a reason to want to be in school. Not, like I said, not every child is going to college. So if I'm not going to college and school is not offering me something that is viable in my life, that's motivating me, that is engaging me, then I don't want to be there. So there you have that dropout pipeline. So bring back vocational ed. Bring back adult education, because some children go to adult school classes to fulfill their requirements. Fully fund that. You can stem the tide of dropouts in high school if you invest in those kinds of programs. Also, let's engage our community, engage our parents, empower our parents, give them resources, give them the capital to be able to help their children and to seek programs and to utilize funding that will help them assist their children be successful in school. And that starts at the primary level and all throughout the different steps that children take as they travel through LAUSD, their career in LAUSD. Investment, engagement, restoring programs that have been cut.
Thank you. Ms. McCrae.
Why do we have dropouts in the first place? The reason we have dropouts is because we're not meeting the needs of the student. First of all, many of the students drop out because of economic reasons, because of the fact that they're the only ones working in the family. Number two, because of health reasons, why students drop out. Social reasons, also mental reasons. We tend to forget that they are still children and they have needs. And we need to realize that it is important for us to have the resources that are available for the students. Right now in LA Unified School District, we cut those resources that were working directly with children that are dropouts. We had a program with almost 30-some employees that work directly with dropout students. Now we only have about 10 Health and Human Services personnel working directly with dropout students. So what does the district need to do? As I said earlier, to assess the needs that LA Unified need to address, and the needs of dropouts. Not only here in LA Unified, but we look at the national dropout rate is over 30%. So this is a problem not only for us, but for the whole nation. And we need to start thinking seriously about where should we put our resources. And it's important for us as we look at the local control funding to think about, will this be our number one priority? The district must look at that, because we look at the fact that we have students dropping out not only in high school, but we have children dropping out in elementary school. 5th and 6th graders are not attending school. So what can we do? We can start by providing the resources necessary. And one of the main resources that are available is Health and Human Services personnel working with students. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McKenna. Let me get you.
Testing, okay. Thank you. The dropout is a product of ineffective outreach and resources. I propose a zero tolerance policy for dropouts, much the way we have zero tolerance for drugs and weapons and assaults. Why do we have dropouts? A dropout is not discovered in high school. He is measured in high school. He is discovered in the 3rd and 4th grade. How do students get so far behind that they get to high school with 3rd and 4th grade skills? That's our responsibility. But without the adequate resources, when counselors have 500 and 600 students to counsel, that's not counseling, that's warehousing. That's not adequate resources. When you don't have parent outreach opportunities and resources to reach the parents of the dropout, if you don't even visit the home, as someone said, you don't even know what their circumstances are. They may be working, they may be sick, they may have children of their own. If you really want to keep students in school, if we suffered a consequence for every student we lost, what that consequence is, I don't want to discuss right now. But if we suffered a consequence, we would not let them drop out. They would be too valuable to drop out. We wouldn't send somebody to be our money recovery counselor if we lost money on the street. Why do we need a dropout recovery counselor when we see them every day? We see the empty seat and we allow it to happen. Attendance is the key factor. And reaching out because they're human beings, and compassion and love are very important for children to know that somebody cares about them. Passion is important in teaching, but compassion is even more important, because a terrorist can be passionate and not have any compassion at all. What is our compassion for children? What resources are we willing to put out there? What sacrifices are we willing to make? And what are we going to give to the teachers who work in the schools with the highest dropout rates? That's not the same teaching set as going to another school where it only has 1% dropouts and another school has 10%. That's not equal for the teachers. Stretching their resources, stretching themselves, trying to be heroic and wearing capes and a letter on their chest, acting like that's the only way you can teach in this school. We can kick it if we want to. If we don't, it kicks us. That's our responsibility.
Thank you. Ms. Hanley-Newbill.
Thank you. Dropout rates. I agree. George McKenna said it right. It doesn't start when we get to high school. When we get to high school, we start tracking and we start seeing it. However, I think it's the resources that are not funded for the students. However, we have to be able to support our parents. I think our parent engagement, as mentioned before, is so critical. It's so critical. Our parents have not been supported. And if we're not supporting our parents, then they're not able to produce what needs to be given to the child, to be able to come to the school, to be able to feel fulfilled. And then at the school site, we have to be able to have the resources there to engage them, to keep them there. I know when I was in school, that's what kept me there, the opportunity to be in sports, the opportunity to have a music class. Those things have been stripped from us. We don't have art, to have an art and humanities program and don't have an art teacher. That's what's propelling the dropout rate at the high school level. So if we bring the resources in, be able to show and be able to care for our kids, be able to love our kids, I think that's one of the things that was mentioned that I really, 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 really think that we need to hone into. And that's some skills that we got to really work out how to do. And resources don't really pay for that. That's a skill set that has to be taught and learned to be able to really love for our kids and have compassion, to really show them that they're needed in our schools. And that has to be developed early on, and there has to be a connection to where our schools become and feel like family centers, and they're connected to the community. And once they're connected to the community, there's an investment from the community to be able to give back to that school. And that school and that community works and cycle together. And then those kids don't want to leave because they feel this connection with the community and the school, and they want to stay there and be productive citizens as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2, we'll start with Ms. Johnson. There you go. Question number 2. What have been the effects, both positive and negative, of recent reform efforts on our schools? Some examples of these are No Child Left Behind, standardized testing, public school choice, charter schools, and reconstitution. Please feel free to go wherever you want with this.
Well, NCLB, standardized testing, public school choice, charter schools, reconstitution, I don't see an upside in any of those. Not one. Not one. It's a documented fact that reconstitution does not work. The data is there. Schools with staff that go through full staff reconstitutions do not turn themselves around in a short period of time. This is what the district expects. This is what organizations that institute that kind of strategy expect, but it does not happen. What it does is creates a climate of failure. And it stigmatizes the teaching staff and the community as a community of failure. So I am not in favor of reconstitution. I'm not in favor of charter conversion based on these issues. NCLB has unrealistic benchmarks. The benchmark of having everyone proficient in the year 2014, this is the year, is also unrealistic. It's like saying everyone in the United States is going to be middle class in 2014. That is an unrealistic threshold, is an unrealistic benchmark. Public school choice. And let's talk about standardized tests. We already over-test our children. We need to focus more on authentic assessment, using standardized testing as a tool for planning, not as an evaluative tool, but as a tool for planning, for teachers, for improving, for implementing professional development, and using standardized tests as planning our curricula and what we do with our students in order to help them achieve and close the achievement gap. If we invested in our schools and did what we were supposed to do as a district, we would not have students or school communities going through public school choice and parent trigger. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McFraven.
As I mentioned earlier, that we need to have a complete makeover for our LA Unified School District. I am pleased that the state started to do away with the CST test. However, as I said before, one shoe does not fit all. And when we look at what is happening with charter schools, reconstitution, standardizing tests, we see that this only hurts students. We need to think about, why are we here? We're here for excellence for all students. And how do we get to excellence? There are many variables that we can use. I do believe that tests can be used as not as the only tools to test students, but to evaluate them to see where they are, first of all. Also, there are other means that you can use to see where a kid is, a student is, by, first of all, looking at a student's portfolio or by observation by teachers. I think it is important for us to move away from standardized testing. And when it comes to charter schools, I think we spend so much time talking about charter schools. Charter schools were organized in 1990 really to help the public schools. Even though we call charter schools public schools, they're really not, because there's no accountability for charter schools. And I think with those two new initiatives that will be coming out, if the maker gets enough petitions to put on the ballot about making sure that there's accountability for charter schools, I believe that you will see fewer and fewer of charter schools, because then they will also have to show what they are doing, show and tell. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McKenna.
I'll try to get them all in. No Child Left Behind was more political than it was pedagogical. And I absolutely believe that 2014 is here. If you don't believe it, it's here. So you just push the benchmark back and keep envisioning things that can't possibly happen in a practical way. But it doesn't mean that No Child Left Behind in concept is a bad thing, because it gives us benchmarks to shoot for. Anything is a benchmark that we ought to shoot for. We also always should try to be doing better than we did the year before. The second one was charter schools. Charter schools are a response to dissatisfied people, and it's an alternative. It's also a way to privatize and get public funds for private entrepreneurs. And let's not be fooled about that. I understand that. And that's not going away, because there are people with big bucks who are in the system now. They're supporting candidates who run for board member. They're supporting takeovers of public schools. They're supporting mayor-controlled schools and all of this, so that the money can be used in certain ways. And it always is to the advantage of the commercialization and shall we say, the capitalization in America. Reconstitution is a desperation attempt. I oversaw a reconstitution that was ordered by a superintendent at one of our high schools, and it's a desperate situation. It's a terrible situation, as much as it is removing students because of somebody who committed a crime and the whole faculty is taken out. Those are desperation moves and extreme moves. They may be necessary for political reasons. They crush teachers. Now, you shouldn't have to be able to do that. You shouldn't have to do that. Choice is important, and I don't blame people who take their children away from schools that don't work. I was a civil rights worker. I've been to jail. I wouldn't send my children to jail. I don't have children to send, but I wouldn't want anybody to do that. But I tell people, if you're dissatisfied with the school that you have to leave in your neighborhood, then fix it while you're sending your child to another school across town or paying for tuition wherever you have to go. And the last one was standardized testing. I'm not an opponent of standardized testing. You have to take standardized tests to get in a university. I went into law school, took a standardized test, graduate record exam, standardized test. My brother's medical doctor, standardized test. You have to get used to taking standardized tests. It's what you do with that standardized test. It shouldn't be punitive or should be punishing the teacher who taught the child.
Thank you. Ms. Henley Newbill.
Wow, so much, so much. And not to be redundant, but No Child Left Behind, we talk about, you know, it definitely created a gap that we could never reach. It created situations that we're now feeling. And it's no wonder that at that same time, so many things start to change within our schools. At the same time, these things were projected to help. They didn't help. And we look back and probably think about 50 years ago when schools were existing and these things didn't even happen, that schools were doing pretty good. And now we have changed and flipped the script, and we got to think, what can we bring back from those times that we don't have now? And how these things now are really hurting our kids and hurting the profession. Well, standardized testing, the same thing. Everyone's revamping it. It's changing. It's going up and down. SAT is changing. The numbers are going up and down. Now it's changing again. And is it helping our students? And like we said, it's there. We need it. We need the benchmarks. We need to know where we're gauging. But how much of it? How much of it is going to be used to say that whether someone's effective or whether someone's not effective? And whether or not you'll be productive or whether or not you will not be productive? Are these the measurements in which we need to use? Probably not. With reconstitution, we know it's no good there. It's no good at all. Breaking up a school, kids are not happy. You see kids hurt because half of their staff is moved. That's not going to help out a school system. That's not going to help teachers. It's not going to help out that community. And so we need to know that we need to move away from those things. Charter. We know definitely charter schools, they're here to make money. We've seen it. But if they're held accountable, and if we can hold them accountable as board members to make sure that schools are to do the things that all public schools are to do and provide, then those schools can be effective. And that's what we need to do with these areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
We've increased emphasis on performance, but we've also increased our reliance on standardized tests. That's just not right. We need to get back to basics. Let teachers teach. The best teachers I had were ones who were flexible, who were innovative, who inspired me, who caused me to aim higher. So let's get back to basics. Let teachers teach. That is not the only way that students can be assessed. That's not the only way that we evaluate teachers. So let's get back to basics. We aren't creating robots. We're creating leaders. We're creating good citizens. We're creating the next cadre of teachers who will be taking your seats in the next election. We're creating leaders. So let's get back to basics. Let's let teachers teach. Let's make sure our students are learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on, we'll go ahead and we'll start with Ms. McFrazier. Simply put, what are your views on Superintendent John Daisy?
That is not a tough question. Let me start by saying, Mr. Daisy would not be here if it wasn't for the board members who brought him here. We're looking at Mr. Daisy. We're looking at Mr. Daisy, but we need to be looking at the board members who brought him here. They knew about his history before he came here. Now look what is happening to this district. I believe that Mr. Daisy should be gone, but he's still here. Why is he here? Because 5 board members voted for him. Accountability goes back to the Board of Education because they are the ones that makes a decision as who comes to this district. It needs 4 board members to bring someone in as superintendent, and this is what happened. So what needs to happen is that Mr. Daisy must go.
Thank you. Dr. McKenna.
The superintendent was my boss, has always been my boss. I've been a superintendent. I am not here to get rid of John Daisy. I'm here to improve the quality of education provided to the students through John Daisy by board policy. Whatever board policy is, the superintendent implements that policy, and we as staff implement policy. I am trying to be a board member, a policy maker. I'm not here to remove employees. I'm not here to remove teachers. I'm not here to remove parents or students. I am trying to become a policymaker that holds everyone accountable, including the superintendent, including everyone above the board members, including the politicians in Sacramento who don't give us enough resources, and the mayor's office who wanted to take over the school district, and people like that. If you look at one person and say that's the person who is responsible for all of this, you'd be sadly mistaken. The politics of a school district is not in the hands of one person. The performance is in everybody's hand, but the politics is in the hands of the elected officials. The superintendent is not an elected official. I'm trying to become an elected official to make sure that everybody in that school district is held accountable. The superintendent works for the board, And as someone previously said, those 4 people or 5 people or 6 or 7, 4 is a majority, determine who the superintendent is and what the superintendent can and cannot do, should and should not do, and what we will tolerate and what we will expect. So it is my expectation that the superintendent can improve what he's trying to do, because I think his ideas about reform are not only good, but they're also noteworthy, and some of them are implemented a little too fast, and some may be implemented too stringently. But I believe that the concept of reform is a good concept. I was reforming when I was at Washington High School before they called it reform. I was just trying to fix a school that people were afraid of and turn it from a school that people ran away from to a school with a waiting list to get into. And the Crips gang was born there. And the Crips are still in Los Angeles. The Crips are in New York. The Crips are in Florida. They still exist. But the deal is you still can go to school and get a good education.
Ms. Shirlette Henley Newbill.
Dr. Deasy, wow. I think it's been said. I think the order has been out of place. He has definitely moved swiftly on a lot of policies. However, I think we've had board members that bowed down to Deasy, and it shouldn't be that way. The board members are the bosses of the superintendent, and we got to remember that order. And if we remember that order, then when policies are coming through, then you got to push back, you got to vet, you got to sit down with all stakeholders that are involved to make sure that this is what's best for the school, what's best for the students, what's best for education. And we can't allow a superintendent to bully his way or bog down or intimidate. We can't allow that to happen. And so a board member has to be able to stand up and to know that, you know what, you have to listen to what we say and be able to get the order back in order. That's what has to happen. Get the order back in order.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
I don't know the superintendent. I don't doubt that he is committed to children, to improving the lives of children. But let's hold the superintendent accountable.
Microphone, please.
Let's hold the, can you hear me now? Thank you. Let's hold the superintendent accountable. Let's make certain that he is responsive to the needs of teachers. The critique I have of the superintendent is that he is not sufficiently collaborative with teachers. He's not talking to teachers. He's not listening to teachers. He's not coming in rooms like this and saying, hey, I know what you need. I want to work with you. I want to collaborate with you. Let's hold the superintendent accountable. Let's make sure that our board is holding him accountable by addressing the issue of iPads. Now, that's an issue where the superintendent was not checked. The board did not check him, and that's the role of a policymaker, to check the superintendent, to make certain that that we have our priorities in order, that we're not just spending money on iPads, but that we're addressing schools and school repairs, making sure that our ceilings aren't falling down. That's what we need to do. That's why the superintendent needs to be in this room talking to you, talking to teachers, making certain that he is hearing the needs of those who are on the front line in our schools. So let's hold him accountable. Let's make him responsive to our needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. As a frontline teacher, I know the impact of policy on my practice. I waste 40 minutes every morning mopping up milk spills and killing bugs from breakfast in the classroom. Okay, so I have firsthand experience on how misdirected intentions have a negative impact on our practice in the classroom. As policymakers, I believe the school board has acquiesced to many of the ideas that Dr. Daisy has brought forward, and that's because they all have similar agendas. Keep in mind that Dr. Daisy, prior to coming to LAUSD, came from a nonprofit organization whose sole purpose is to privatize public education and to pad the pockets of those private enterprises seeking to do such that. So as a board member, we must hold the superintendent accountable for what he does. He operates devoid of transparency, and that is something that we must insist on him doing. I do not know of any organization large as LAUSD that allows a superintendent to operate willy-nilly without a set of goals every organization, large organization that I'm involved in, prior to their head man or head woman's reauthorization or renewal of contract, does not set a set of goals and reviews those set of goals. Has that leader done this, 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 and this? If it is yes, then that leader gets his contract renewed. If it is no, then that leader should not get their contract renewed. And it is on us as a Board of Education to pull in all members of this organization, all stakeholders, to collaborate on that set of goals and to hold that superintendent accountable, not just to the children, but to the stakeholders, to all employees of LAUSD. And if he is not accountable, then he must go.
Thank you. All right, for the next question, we'll start with Dr. McKenna. Breakfast in the classroom has greatly impacted the school day. We have less time for curriculum at a time when the demands on teachers and students are as high as they have ever been. How can that be rectified?
Well, the intent was to feed the children and get busy with school. That was the intent. I'm not sure that it worked the way it was intended to. However, you need to know there's a contradiction of influences here. The classified employees said they welcomed the breakfast in the classroom because it extended their job opportunities. It extended their employment opportunities. If you don't know that, you need to ask them what they think. I've talked to them, and they didn't say, we prefer not to have breakfast in the classroom, we prefer to have it in the cafeteria. I'm not sure if it is working the way it's supposed to work everywhere. Some teachers say they can handle it, others say they can't. If it's groupthink, then the groupthink ought to say, and group speak, tell the superintendent that is not what you approve of. It may not make a difference to him. People believe that it has an advantage to children. I look at it as a distraction, but I'm not in the classroom. I'm trying to think, if I were a high school teacher, which I was, if the students brought food in the classroom, I'd stop them from having, I'd take the food, put it in, and say, get it when you leave, as we always did, spit the gum out, all this kind of stuff. So if the students are in the classroom with food, that becomes a challenge for hygiene, it becomes a challenge for maintenance, it becomes a challenge for being able to move things out of the way on time in a timely manner and get a full instructional period in. Those are challenges. If the students are getting nutrition, that's a good thing. I believe there's an alternative to that. It's called a cafeteria. So I'm not going to condemn it because I don't know if it really is doing what some people say it is and others say, I like it like it is. I would want to take a real honest to goodness poll and take a look at it. I've been to the elementary schools, and there is a challenge in some cases. Other teachers are very efficient, it works very well. Other teachers, stuff is everywhere. And sometimes that's just the way it is in some classroom. Stuff is everywhere, you know. Some teachers have stuff in their cupboards that don't go in my cupboard. I've got stuff there from 3 years ago. It's an old ham sandwich. You know, some of us teach like that. Great teachers, just a little junky on the side. But that's who we are, right?
Thank you. Ms. Henley Newbill.
Breakfast in the classroom. Well, of course, there should be breakfast in the cafeteria, as we shared. It definitely needs to be breakfast in the classroom, in the cafeteria primarily. And for me, I think I take a different approach because some of the food that is being offered, unfortunately, is not the healthiest of choices. And as a physical educator, I think that's what's primary. You got to have healthy choices first. You can't be providing food that's not going to stimulate and help a student. Okay, that's the first priority too. But then I think, as we mentioned, you're impeding on space, you're impeding on instructional time, which is supposed to be 10 minutes, turns out to be 30 minutes. We're supposed to be helping clean the environment, then, it's messing up the environment. So it's a contradictory, but these are one of the policies. As a board member, you gotta be able to push back and vet. You gotta be able to sit down with stakeholders. Is this really what's necessary? And understandable, it's a contradictory with different unions of, well, would this work for you, would this not work for you? But you gotta come to a compromise. You gotta compromise with integrity. You gotta be able to sit down and say, wow, is this the best for all of us? And so, cafeteria, the best place, and definitely healthy food, but not an impediment of your education and instructional time.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Breakfast in the classroom is just another example of the superintendent not being collaborative. It's another example of the superintendent not listening. It's another example. Is that better? Another example of the superintendent not being collaborative. It's another example of the superintendent just not listening to the needs and the priorities of teachers. Now, we know that nutrition is a good thing. We know that in District 1, a lot of our students have challenges with obesity. A lot of our students are not able to get a good meal at home. But there is another place for that, and it is called the cafeteria. I had some good breakfast in the cafeteria when I was a student. So we've got to hold our superintendent more accountable. We've got to talk to our superintendent, let him know that these are problems that we're facing in our classrooms. These are problems that we're facing in our schools. And so I believe breakfast in the classroom is, again, an issue of the superintendent just not being accountable to the needs of the people who are on the front line, who are dealing day in and day out with bugs in the classroom, dealing day in and day out with mess on the tables, who are dealing day in and day out with students losing instructional time. So we've got to hold the superintendent accountable, make him know that this is another point where he's not been collaborative with this group. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. As a frontline teacher that is involved in breakfast in the classroom every single day, I can tell you that a full child learns well. A hungry child does not. So I get it. I get the intention. But to embed this program within the school day shows the disconnect that Dr. Daisy has with his frontline teachers. I get feeding every child. Feed them in the cafeteria prior to the start of the school day. Give every child that hot breakfast prior to the start of the school day. I just left Target yesterday buying a new box of Swifters, the little wet wipes, because that I went in my own pocket to buy those materials necessary for me to keep my classroom clean after my children eat, after they have breakfast every day, when there's spills and little bobbles. And I perfected, we call it bug hockey. I don't like smushing those big bugs that present themselves in my classroom every day because they're coming to get those nice little treats that my children leave behind, and that tasty little piece of muffin that my little angel left in their desk because they just did not want to throw it away. So 40 minutes on the average, I lose the prime instructional time each and every day because of breakfast in the classroom. And don't think that the intention of Dr. Daisy was to feed these children. Don't think that there aren't dollars coming into this district from the U.S. Department of Agriculture because they've implemented breakfast in the classroom. So it's the true intention is to feed these children and make sure that they're full, or to gain dollars. Gain dollars. See, that is the transparency problem that we have with our school board and with our superintendent. I believe in feeding children, but do it outside of the scope of the school day.
Thank you.
Yes, we talk about training up a child in the way he should go. And I think the one thing that we should really think about training is where a child should be eating. And the place that a child should be eating is in the cafeteria. We need to teach our children values. Number two, I'm concerned about the type of food that our children are receiving. Really, is it hot meals? Is it a lot of sweets? What is it? Now, I talked to a lot of teachers who are already feeding students in the classroom, and some says it's okay and some says it's not. But what I'm concerned about is the fact that in April, all of the middle and elementary schools will be having breakfast in the classroom. Then we need to take a survey. I believe that a campus should be clean. Now, if we start eating in the classroom, we're gonna see more infections, not only of bugs, but rats and everything else. And I think we need to really consider what we need to do about making sure that our children do receive a nutritious meal. But I think we should not take away from instructional time. We're talking about making sure that we have a society where we are training students so they can be prepared for the 21st century. I think it's important for us to think about what we need to do now as far as whether or not our children should be eating in the classroom or whether or not they should be having instructional time. We're all about excellence in education, and this is something that we need to consider. I do not believe that students should be eating in the classroom, but I do believe that every child should have a meal to eat because many kids do come to school hungry each and every day.
Thank you. And now Ms. Henley Newbill. Do you believe the superintendent acted on the best interest of the Miramonte students when removing the entire Miramonte staff based on allegations made against one teacher? As board member, what advice would you have given to the superintendent?
Wow. As we've seen, teachers, innocent teachers, being hurt, knowing that, as we have some in this room, being hurt. The advice, obviously, you can't remove an entire campus like that. You hurt kids, you hurt families, you hurt teachers by doing that. Advice is obvious. You got to isolate some of the situations. You got to move them out. But you cannot do that without being able to hear what's going on the ground. You can't go in like gangbusters and just break up places like that. It's ridiculous to be able to think that kids are going to be moved all over the place and hurt by that. And so, no, the advice would obviously be that you got to bring in the ears, you got to bring people in to be able to help you. You can't do this alone. This is too big. It's too big of an issue. You got to bring people in to be able to vet out, as well as with the teachers. You got to bring the teachers in. You got to hear their voice. You got to hear what they're saying. And that's not done, and that wasn't done in the way that it should have been done, to be able to hear them appropriately and to be able to speak on their behalf in which a way that they needed to be heard and in which a way that they needed to be supported. They needed that support. They didn't receive that way. And so the advice would have obviously been to bring them in, to be able to have them hear them out, and to be able to act upon the advice that was given based on the teachers that are in that situation.
Thank you. Johnson.
Flat out, the decision was wrong. The decision was wrong. I went to Miramonte. I sat and talked to parents who were sitting on the grass in Miramonte, camped out with their students, camped out with their children, who were hurt, who were crying, who were wondering where their teacher had gone. So to wholesale remove all the teachers in the school, to not afford them the due process, to put a scarlet letter on their chest effectively, was wrong. There's another way. So this is an easy question. It was wrong. I would have done it differently. The superintendent should have thought more clearly and more strategically about this issue.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. What happened at Miramonte was horrific, but what happened afterwards was equally horrific. When you rush to judgment and do not allow due process to take its course, then you have what happened at Miramonte. Removing all of the teachers before allowing law enforcement agencies to do their due process, to finish their investigation, what you did was you stigmatized the staff, you punished the students, you punished the community, and you punished, and I'm talking not just the teaching staff, but we're talking about the removal of all the support staff also. So every stakeholder at that school was punished for the dastardly deeds of one or two. And that is just horrible. And what we have to do as an organization now, it's not going to be the first allegation, it's not the first allegation, it's not going to be the last. That's the way society is. LAUSD is a large organization. Every one of us out there does not have the best of intentions with our children. That's life, that's society. But what we have to do is put in protections. We have to put in a procedure. We have to put in a structure that when these types of incidences occur, put in a structure that helps protect staff, students, and support personnel from what happened at Miramonte. Allow personnel, law enforcement personnel, the judiciary system to run its course, to do its investigation, and then allow the students and the school to heal with those staff members that are there to love, support, nurture, and educate our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that the board realized that they made a mistake. Again, you have to not only blame the superintendent, you have to also blame the Board of Education, because there is procedure for when something like this happened in the first place. I think that due process should be awarded to every individual. And I thought it was very unfair that everyone at the school was told they had to leave. But Miramani was not the only school that had been confronted with the same issue. And I think this is the reason that the board, as well as Mr. Daisy, acted in the way they did, because of all the past publicity about what was happening with child abuse. And you know, with child abuse, this is something that everyone in the community get it up in alarm about. But I do believe that the district did not act in good faith by moving all of the teachers and the staff from the school.
Thank you. Dr. McKenna.
My response as a respondent is very different than everyone here. I was the superintendent responsible for implementing a policy that I thought was extremely flawed, a practice and a decision that rendered the teachers mute, disconnected them from their children, put them in another location, and I was responsible, although nobody told me what to do, but tried to make sure they felt still humanized by this process that was extremely dehumanizing. Now, it was an extreme measure. It had many spin-offs. The spin-offs were not only that the teachers were disgruntled in the beginning with me, hated me. By the time we ended, there wasn't that much hatred. I think they understood that I had their best interests at heart and tried to still keep them comfortable and feeling dignified. But the spin-offs were that because the whole school was painted with a brush and lawyers were up and down in front of the school with the cameras, passing out cards saying, were you molested too? Me too, me too. And before you know it, people were saying, yeah, I was molested 15 years ago. By whom? Somebody. And before you know it, there was $30 million given out before a decision was even made and adjudicated. In addition to which, we were looking in records for 20 years back, and people are being pulled out for things that were not criminalized by that point, being administratively, people are being punished even now for those kinds of things. Some people have even told me that was heroic. The superintendent stood up. None of those people are in schools. They're in the community, in the politics of it. They said, that's the heroic thing to do. Stop the abuse. Well, it was one teacher. And every teacher had to suffer the consequences of that. Not just the teacher, the cafeteria worker, the cook, the custodian, everybody had to be removed from that school. There was not one person on that school who had any memory of what that school looked like on Friday when they shut it down for 3 days, 2 days, and on Wednesday we came back with a brand new crew. I had to oversee that. It was personal for me. It hurt. It was painful. More than anybody up here, I felt it. And the teachers who were here felt it also.
Thank you.
I was very sorry it happened.
Thank you. Okay. This will be the final question for this evening, and then we'll transition from here into the closing statements. And Ms. Henley Newbill, you'll start with the closing statements. But for the final question, we'll go back to Mr. Johnson to start. Here you go. All right. Although District 1 has been historically represented by an African American, it now has a Latino student population of 70%. What are the three most important issues, in your opinion, affecting Latino students, and how would you address them if elected?
The three most important issues affecting Latino students are the three most important issues affecting all students in District 1. It's about resources, it's about the people, and it's about parents. We need resources to invest in early childhood education, resources that allow us to have our fair share of local control funding dollars, resources that allow us to have our fair share of bond dollars and Measure Q dollars to fix our crumbling schools. It's about resources. It's about people. It's about supporting teachers. My mom just arrived in the audience, Betty Johnson in the back, about supporting people like her, supporting people like you. Teachers, resources. It's about giving professional development to our teachers. And finally, it's about parents, making sure that our parents are engaged, that our parents have a voice in their child's education. So the issues affecting Latino students are the issues that affect African American students. Resources, people, and parents.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. What we must do first is make sure that our students who are English language learners have the support and resources necessary to make them successful in our school district. When we cut back on resources, we cut back on the necessary tools that teachers need to make sure that our English language learners have access to the opportunities to achieve. They have access to the opportunities to learn. So we need to develop, I guess you could say, fully fund our schools. If we're going to bring our school district back to where it was, we need to fully fund our school, bring back those resources, fund our educational programs like English language development programs, bring those support services like our bilingual aides back into the classroom to assist teachers with the necessary skills in order to address the needs of their English language learners. We also need to engage their parents. We need to provide workshops, programs, bring them into the schools, give them the tools necessary that they need to assist their children at home so that they can be successful learners in our schools also. So supporting our English language learners, supporting our parents in their quest to assist their children in order to learn, and restoring our resources, restoring our funding so that we can continue to support the programs that support the needs of our students, especially our English language learners.
Thank you.
In District 1, we have almost 17,000 students who are English language learners. And I think it's important that we make sure that we take care of all of our children. All of our children need basic resources. And we're talking about making sure that all of our kids, students, will be able to succeed in the 21st century. Then we have to prepare our English language learners also by providing them with choices. Also to make sure that we make sure those who are ready to be reclassified, that they are reclassified. But I also believe that we have to take care of all of the students in District 1. Not only English learners, but those who are standard English learners. We need to make sure that we provide them with aids in the classrooms for English learners. We have to make sure that they can have a dual language program. It's important that we look at all of the resources that are available for them and use those resources and make sure that we make our parents feel welcome when they come to school. This is very important, especially for English language learners and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McKenna.
The English language learner problem is only a problem if we under-resource the staff and the school sites. It is not the only group that is more disadvantaged. Actually, the data tells us that the group that is greatest disadvantaged is the African American male. I'm one of them. So I have no problem reaching out, as Mr. Johnson said, that all the students have the same issues. And also that bilingualism should be taught in elementary school so that everybody is a standard English learner and another language, at least two, and perhaps three. California should be Spanish. Probably ought to be Korean as well, and some Asian language. But if we're going to really address the students, we have to target which students need it the most. Every student with a Spanish surname is not in need of special services, and they should be reclassified when, thank you, Hattie, when in fact they get out of and can transition into that. I absolutely know that every child needs the best we can give them. And the English language learner has a challenge that when they go home, English may not be spoken, so they don't get a chance to reinforce it. But we have to address that in a way that says, well, what do we do about that? We can't get angry because they speak English with a Spanish accent or broken English. We have students who were born here who don't speak standard English. I would assume that we're trying to teach standard English to everyone. I don't think we're trying to teach Spanglish to Latino students. I think everyone is trying to teach standard English. So the question is, do we have the resources to teach it to all of our children who don't speak Spanish standard English, including the Asian child, including any other child, the Armenian child? If the schools are serious, if we are serious about it, we will not shortchange any child and just pass them by because we don't have time for them. The English language learner child is just one of the problems, and it's not the only problem.
Thank you. Ms. Henley-Newbill.
English language learners, as was mentioned, we definitely need to put the resources to provide those programs for our students because there is a large population. There is a need for dual immersion programs in this district so that those students are enhanced at a young age. But the other thing that I think is really important is the parents, because the parents need to be supported. The parents need to support it by bringing back adult ed programs. Those adult ed programs helped our students help our parents because their parents were able to take those classes and be able to feel more comfortable to be able to come into the school site. So when those three things work together, being able to provide the students and the staff in the schools to provide the ELL programs as well as the dual language programs in connection with building the support for the parents so that when they come into the school site, they feel welcome, but then in addition, adding that adult ed piece where they're getting the support as a parent to feel that, wow, I'm getting the support that I need to be able to come into this school site, to be able to help my child, to be able to connect all those pieces yet again together, having that adult ed, having that parent piece, and having that student get those resources right there on that campus. I think when we get all those three things together, it makes a better scene for our EL students.
Thank you. We'll now transition into closing statements. Ms. Charlotte Henley-Newbill.
It's all right, it'll be the longest name on the ballot. Is the fact of teacher jail important to you? Is the fact that we've been given Prop 30 and we haven't received a raise yet, is that important? Yes. Is it the fact that maybe we're getting this unhealthy food in the classroom that we talked about? Is that important to you? Yes. These are things that are important to you, they're important to me. The fact that $1 billion has been spent on our technology and our schools are falling apart, that's important to me. Is that important to you? Yes. If it's important to you, then I'm your candidate because I'm experiencing the same things. I know exactly what you're going through. I've been through it. I'm going through it right now as a teacher in the trenches alongside with you. And right now, I'm being able to put together a large group of volunteers, parents, former players, former students, my community members, my church members. They're all getting the word out that there's a candidate that's a teacher in the school system just like you. And you know what's been an inspiration for me? Marguerite Lamont. She's been my inspiration because she was right there beside us when we tried to fight off, and we did fight off Reardon. She was right there. You know who else is an inspiration for me? Monica Ratliff. She's an inspiration because when the corporate candidates came, she fought them off and she won. So I want to be that teacher too. But you know who else is an inspiration for me? It's my son, Isaiah Mason Newbill. I have a son who's in this board district in this community right now, who will be going to schools in this board district, and that gives me the passion and drive. And so I stand here before you as a union rep, wanting to be that next teacher, to be able to fight the attacks that are coming against teachers and students and all the stakeholders that are affected in this board district. Thank you.
Dr. George McKenna.
Thank you. When I leave, I intend to try to become your board member. Please do not assume that I am not on your side because I have not been a teacher in a long time. I have visited more classrooms than everyone up here combined. They have been in the classroom, the classroom. I've visited many, many, many classrooms in multiple school districts, including LA Unified, because I was supervising instruction. I also know what goes on in classrooms, and I think I can represent you in a way that very few other people can. I know how Beaudry works, and I know when it doesn't work. I know how to stand up for you and how to stand down when things are not going your way and should be going your way. You are the most important employee in the school district. The children have to have you being effective. You need the resources. You must have them. The school district cannot afford cannot afford to continue to put teachers in a position of lacking resources, including pay in your pockets, including time to do your job, including time to have telephones to reach out to parents and bring them into the school, in terms of time after school. If we can keep the gymnasium open till 10 o'clock at night, why does the library close at 3:30 every day? The athletes are there. No, I was an athlete. I'm not knocking it, but we have a bus that brings them home from athletics. Do we have a bus that can bring them home from the library so that we can academically enrich them as well as we athletically celebrate them? There is so much that I could say in these final 2 minutes. 30 seconds, I have 30 seconds. If in fact, and it's probably the last time I'm going to talk to you as a group like this, I know and feel what you feel every day. I am a unique candidate, admittedly. I have been an administrator, and I want to be a board member where I can hold us all accountable, including myself. George McKenna is not perfect. I've never even tried to be perfect. I've just tried to be effective, enthusiastic, and committed to my profession called education. I want to do that. If you give me a chance, when you see the ballot box, do not pass me by.
Thank you. Ms. Hattie McFraser.
Good afternoon. Again, I would like to thank the PACE Committee for allowing us to have this forum. I want you to consider how important it is to have someone to sit in District 1 as a board member. We have to look at the whole picture. We have to look at the whole child. We have to look at the whole community. Not only teachers, but every employee in LA Unified School District. We need to think seriously about whether or not we are ready to educate our children for the 21st century. We need excellence in education. How do we get excellence in education? First of all, by making sure that we uplift the morale of every employee in this district by giving them a raise. We have to be committed to District 1. We need all employees who work in District 1 feel as if education is important not only to the child, but is important to them. Means from the cafeteria worker, the custodian, all the way up to the administrators, the board members. I understand that it is important that a board member be able to work together with all the board members. What will I bring to the board? Teamwork, collaboration. You need 4 people to pass anything. We need to look at this board and realize that we need to work on collaboration and focus on the priorities of this district, which is children first, and make sure you take care of your teachers and all the employees in LA Unified School District.
Thank you. Ms. Rachel Johnson.
Thank you. Rachel Johnson, wife, mother, grandmother, public servant, 31 years classroom teacher, 30 years UTLA member. For far too long, LAUSD has misdirected their allocations to our classrooms, to our schools, and has misdirected intentions for what is best for the children of Board District 1. If you want a board member that will fight for our pay raise, then you vote for Rachel Johnson. If you want a board member that will fight to fully restore schools to that pre-recession funding level, let's bring back our health and human services personnel, let's bring back our counselors, let's bring back our classified staff, let's fully staff our schools with the custodial members that they need to keep them clean and support teachers so that we can teach in a clean environment and classroom, then you vote for Rachel Johnson. If you want a board member that will fight to reduce your class size to pre-recession levels so that you can focus your best intentions on the achievement of your students, then vote for Rachel Johnson. What we need in Board District 1 is a representative that will continue the fight of Mrs. Marguerite Lamont, that will not back down to the hidden agendas of our superintendent and board members. You want a board member that's going to put the children first. What's good for the children is good for me. And if you want a board member that will put the intentions and the well-being and achievement of the children of Board District 1 first and foremost, then you vote for Rachel Johnson. Whether they're ELLs, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alex Johnson.
I'll hold the mic closer this time. Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you to PACE for hosting this candidate forum. I'll end where I began. I'm the product of LA schools, and I'm the product of a teacher who invested in me, who instilled in me, who sowed in me the value of education, the importance of education, the importance of public service. I will fight with you. I'm someone you can work with. I'm someone who will be on the front lines with you. I'm someone who will fight to ensure that you are receiving the fair compensation that you need. I will fight for you. I am collaborative. I am innovative. I bring people together. I will fight. I will work with you. It's somewhat improbable that I am standing here before you today, but I can promise you right here, right now, that your concerns will not go unheard, that your priorities will not go unheard or unaddressed, that I will be there with you, I will show up, and I will show out on that board. So allow me to be your board member, and I will continue the fight for you. I will make certain that our students are supported. I will make certain that we're closing the achievement gap, and I think that begins and ends with great teachers. I'm only here because of great teachers. And I'll continue to partner, to support, to fight for each of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment and thank all 5 candidates for coming tonight. I'd like to thank all of you for being here tonight.